Well, good morning. I'm Congressman Steven Horsford, proud to represent Nevada's 4th Congressional District. And today I am proud to be introducing a bill because a disproportionate number of the 6 million tipped workers who are women and people of color make as little as $2.13 an hour. Which really is poverty wages at a time when families and workers are trying to afford the cost of living, making these workers getting paid as little as $2.13 an hour vulnerable to the economic inequalities that persist in our society. And I have been leading the charge to close the racial wealth gap, and we can no longer tolerate the inequalities in the tipped work wage. We cannot ignore the numbers. On average, workers in tipped industries, many of whom earn less than $37,000 a year, continue to experience staggering income gaps compared to other professions. Latinas and Black women in particular face significant pay disparities, earning less than their white male counterparts. If we're serious about income equality and closing the gender pay gap, then this is the bill that people need to get behind. Sadly, for too many, tips are not a bonus. They are the difference between making rent or facing eviction, between feeding their children or going hungry themselves. The TIPS Act will change this. First, we will eliminate the sub-minimum wage. Ensuring that tipped workers are paid a fair, livable wage, no matter what. No one should have to depend on the whims of a good tip, which is not a guarantee, in order to make ends meet. Second, this legislation will exempt tips from federal income tax up to a certain threshold, allowing service workers to keep more of what they earn. These workers shouldn't be taxed twice, once through payroll and then again on their tips. They deserve the full benefit of their hard-earned income. Now, I want to be clear. The TIPS Act isn't just about wages or taxes. It's about economic justice. It's about recognizing that service workers are the backbone of our economy. It's about creating a future where one job should be enough, where people don't have to juggle between multiple jobs just to get by, and where workers are treated with the dignity and the respect that they deserve. So to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, we cannot delay this action any longer. We must act to ensure that every worker, regardless of their job, can earn a fair wage and keep more of what they earn. The future of our workforce depends on it, and closing the racial wealth gap and the gender gap will be part of why the TIPS Act will be so successful. Together with all of you, the people who make this industry strong, we can pass the TIPS Act and make a meaningful step towards a fairer, more just economy for everyone. So I want to thank Saru Jayaman for her leadership from One Fair Wage, and all of you for the advocacy and the hard work that you're putting into this effort.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much, Congressmember Horsford, for your leadership on this issue and on so many other issues, for uplifting all of us workers who need the right to live and to feed our families. Look, this is such a special day for me and for all of us. We've been fighting for 22 years since 9/11, when this work began, to raise the wage in this industry and end the subminimum wage for tipped workers. And we've been saying for decades, this is an enormous workforce that keeps getting overlooked. 14 million workers, 1 in 10 American workers that could turn out to vote, but don't because they rarely see their top needs prioritized in the election season, which is why we're so thrilled that tipped workers are in the news. We're so thrilled that tipped workers are being talked about by presidential candidates. We're so thrilled that we have congressional leaders who are leading the way to say what we really need, which is one fair wage. We are a national organization of 300,000 restaurant and service workers and 1,000 restaurant owners. I want to thank the workers who have come from Michigan, Illinois, Connecticut, New York, where am I forgetting? Massachusetts, how could I forget? Sorry, all over the country. We have employers here today from New York and from New Hampshire and from California. We are a huge fighting entity, fighting for one fair wage, and have been because this sub-minimum wage for tipped workers that faces our industry is a direct legacy of slavery. It was created after emancipation to allow restaurants to hire newly freed slaves, in particular black women, not allow them to earn a wage and tell them, you're just gonna live on this new thing that's come from Europe called tips. It was the first time in world history that tips were used as a replacement for wages rather than a bonus, as they were always meant to be for generations. After emancipation, that idea that tips could become a wage replacement for black women became law for everybody in 1938 as part of the New Deal, and we went from $0 in 1938 to the whopping $2.13 an hour for the largest workforce of women, the largest workforce of people of color, the largest workforce of immigrants, the largest workforce of young people, and it's not right. It's gotta end. It's gotta end. 43 states persist with this legacy of slavery, not Nevada, the great Nevada, not California, not Oregon, Washington, Montana, Alaska, Minnesota, but 43 states continue with this legacy of slavery, forcing a workforce that's overwhelmingly women to tolerate the absolute worst sexual harassment and economic instability of any workforce because they have to put up with so much from customers to get tips. But things are changing. With the pandemic, we saw 6 million workers lost their jobs, and 2/3 of tipped workers couldn't even get unemployment insurance because they were told their wages were too low. And they went back to work. They found tips had gone down, harassment had gone up, started leaving the industry en masse. 1.2 million workers left this industry. Thousands of restaurants raised wages in order to recruit and retain staff. And we are in an incredible moment of worker power, and we are winning. We just won one fair wage, ending the sub-minimum wage for tipped workers here in our nation's capital in Washington, D.C. We have workers here from Chicago. We won it in Chicago in October 2023. And I especially want to congratulate the workers here from Michigan because on July 31st, Michigan became the 8th state in the United States and the first east of the Mississippi to end this legacy of slavery and the sub-minimum wage for tipped workers. It is on the ballot this November in Massachusetts. It is moving in New York, in Illinois, statewide. It is moving in Maryland. We have our bill sponsor here. You're going to hear from him in a few minutes. I really want to thank him for his leadership. This is moving all across the country, and that's why this bill is so critical. Look, no tax on tips has been a rally cry, right, of this presidential election. But did you know that 2/3 of tipped workers don't even earn enough to pay federal income tax? And so, yes, it's great. Let's have a little bit of extra money around tax season, but what we really need is a raise. What we really need is one fair wage. And we're so grateful to Congressman Horsford because he is, through this bill, creating momentum for all the state bills that are moving across the country, and we are going to win. Let us not forget, under the Trump administration, President Trump tried to make tips the property of owners rather than workers. So we are looking for leadership that will protect tips, that will, yes, perhaps get rid of taxes on tips, but most importantly, will give workers what they deserve, need, and demand, which is one fair wage. What do we want?
One fair wage!
When do we want it?
Now!
I want to introduce two incredible worker leaders, Antoinette Simmons from Chicago and Juan Carlos Romero from New York.
Woo, woo, woo! You know, Saru. She said more than enough. Good morning. My name is Antoinette Simmons, and I have been a tip worker in the restaurant industry for about 15 years and more, and I'm still serving. Most tip workers are women like me, and like most tip workers, I've had to deal with harassment, sexual harassment, and the uncertainty of how I'm going to be able to pay my bills working weekly. Okay, so it hasn't always been easy for me. I'm so excited today. Today is a special day for tip workers and restaurant owners across the country. It's the first time we have the news out here supporting all the industry workers. Finally, we've been recognized. Make some noise. One fair wage. You know what it is. And, you know, we're essential workers. We served you all during the pandemic. And we love our job. We love to help and sit and serve and make you feel good and make sure your food is hot. Make sure your drinks are fixed right. And when we're taking down those notes for you, we're always doing it for the customer. Okay? I just want to be clear on that. Don't forget that. We put in hard work. So anyway, the Tip Income Protection and Support Act bill will do two things that are needed for tip workers. It will remove tax on tips, which will help some of us, but the tax credit won't help enough to pay our bills. Now listen, it's the second part of the bill that I am most excited about, the part that will help lift up all tip workers. America, we need a raise. America, we need to do away with some minimum wage for tip workers and its legacy of slavery. America, we need to make sure all workers earn a full livable wage, and that includes tip workers with tips on top. We the people. We the people. We stand with the Congressman Member Horsford for the tip income protection and support. I'm getting ready to do that. The Tip Act bill. He needs that. So we telling all the industry workers to get on board and support this act, okay? It is very important. And as you all know, I come from the great state of Illinois, where we organized and we won one fair wage in Chicago and passed it. Act like you know, and we can pass it everywhere, okay? We are now on our way to pass this in the entire state of Illinois this year. And we want to thank Congressman Horsford for creating the national momentum we need to win this in Illinois and every state. And also we want to thank VP Harris for endorsing one fair wage in her platform. It is time tip workers across the country finally get one fair wage. One fair wage! One fair wage! One fair wage! One fair wage! Hey!
Thank you. Buenos días. My name is Juan Carlos Romero. I have been a restaurant worker for 15 years. I am proud to be representing the Latino tip workers who work as servers, bartenders, buses, barbacks, delivery workers, and more in the industry across the country. We work hard. We work hard. Let me say that again. We serve on our feet all day, in and out. Many of us work in multiple jobs to be able to afford to pay the rent and groceries. And we have to deal with rough conditions. We show up for our work, we show up for our families, and we show up for our communities. Today is a good day for our industry because we are finally being seen and heard on the national stage. We are here to say we need a raise. We need a raise. We need a raise. The TIPS Act will make a difference in the lives of hundreds of thousands of tip workers. Many of us immigrants, all hardworking people, I am here to say that we need a livable wage with tips on top. I come out of New York, where one fair wage is moving a state legislature. I have helped organize workers across the state to come to Albany and to advocate for change. We are so grateful for Vice President Harris for endorsing one fair wage in their platform, and to Congressman Horsford for introducing the TIPS Act, which is uplifting exactly what New York and every state needs to pass. We plan to make a livable wage with tips for every worker in the restaurant industry in New York, in Illinois, and across the country. It is time for one fair wage. One fair wage! What do we want?
One fair wage!
When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
One fair wage!
When do we want it?
Now!
So One Fair Wage is not just workers. We have 1,000 restaurant owners who are working with us to support the One Fair Wage and the Tips Act. And I want to invite now Russell Jackson, owner of Reverence. He's come all the way from New York to share his perspective on the issue.
I love these guys. It's awesome. And clearly I'm distinctly dressed a little differently than the rest, and not just because I'm an owner, but because I'm old school One Fair Wage. I've been on this bandwagon since 2009, my first restaurant in San Francisco, and now I own Reverence, which is in Harlem, New York, and we, from our inception in 2019, started as a One Fair Wage restaurant in a high road kitchen. And we do it because we know it's the right thing, simply because any legacy of slavery needs to end now. We're way overdue. The pandemic was something that was very, very tough for all of us. We all got the call to be of service, to be critical workers. We knew that we were there to do that job, and we did that. The respect that we asked is that, in turn, we got a fair shake. That we were able to increase wages for our staffs in a way that didn't compromise our businesses or put us into hardships. The ways of being able to do that and to help offset that is to, A, not to tax the tips, but also to make sure that those tips go straight to those employees in their entirety. Whether it be a service charge or straight hand-to-hand tip, whatever the case be, that those workers that are working alongside of us are taken care of. Restaurants aren't just a chef and an owner and a bartender and a waiter. It is a team. And that team together create hospitality. And we do this because we love doing this. This is who we are as a people, and this is what's important to us to make you happy in your life because you need us. And we do know that. Workers need guaranteed for fair wages and stability. They want to return to restaurants. It's already been, we need to have a benchmark that creates a level playing field for all. Without that legislation, and without legislation with teeth, we will continue to see the types of conditions that exist today. You've heard some of the different pieces of it from the different legislations, from the different administrations that have created problems for us. We're really, really beyond happy about the fact that the Harris-Walz ticket has gone ahead and adopted our language and adopted our ideas, because with them, we know there will be change. Again, I couldn't say more thank you to you. You know, it makes me want to think again about moving to Nevada.
We got a place for Reverence. Reverence too.
I love the idea. I do love the idea. But again, without you, without your advocacy, we couldn't continue to take these steps forward. So thank you all. What do we need?
One fair wage!
Thank you.
Wage justice is racial justice!
Well, good morning, everybody. Let me start by thanking Congressman Horsford for his leadership on this issue. He has given One Fair Wage new life, not just in the great state of Maryland, but throughout the country. And let me thank every single worker here. Think about it. They took time off to come to the nation's capital. If you watch us on TV, sometimes you may not want to come to the nation's capital. And they've decided that they're going to fight for the dignity of work. How critically important that is. I'm Adrian Boafo. I serve as a member of the State House in the great state of Maryland. And I represent the 23rd Legislative District and serve as the Assistant Majority Leader of the Maryland House of Delegates. And let me tell one thing today. Our party is the party of workers. We're standing for workers. Donald Trump, and the other side of the aisle, has said, you're on your own. You want to afford a house, you're on your own. You want to afford prescription drugs, you're on your own. You want to be able to afford childcare, you're on your own. And what we're saying today is that wages are the backbone of how folks get up, how we lift our workers up, and how they succeed here in America. And so I want to thank the Congressman for his leadership and thank Saru for her leadership. But know that in Maryland, we have the trifecta. And this year, we're going to make sure that when I get back to session in January, that we use this momentum that the Congressman has given us to ensure that Maryland becomes another state that ends the subminimum wage. And Maryland loves you too. Let me end by saying this, though. For every issue Americans focus on, wages and dignity of wealth is at the center of it.
That's right.
If we're going to really make sure that this country reaches its full potential, we have to stop this 22-year-old fight and make sure workers finally have the wages that they deserve. So thank you guys, and thank you, Congressman.
Thank you
So again, I'm pleased to join with all of One Fair Wage and workers all across the country in introducing the Tipped Income Protection and Support Act, or the TIPS Act. Again, a bill that will finally provide long overdue fairness and dignity to workers in the service industry. And I'm proud that this legislation addresses two critical elements. Again, eliminating the sub-minimum wage, which has been frozen at just $2.13 an hour since 1991. I don't even know that people who go to restaurants really know that people are making as little as $2.13 an hour. There's no tip that can overcome a wage as little as $2.13 an hour that has not increased since 1991.
30 years.
It's nothing short of a disgrace.
That's right.
And again, I'm proud that Nevada has helped to lead the way by making sure that we have a state minimum wage that's higher than the federal minimum wage. And we don't believe in poverty wages for our waiters and our bartenders and our hotel staff. I ran the Culinary Training Academy for 10 years before I came to Congress. And so I trained workers in this industry. I know how hard this work is and how skilled these jobs are. They deserve every bit of the wages that they've earned.
That's right.
And the second piece is that it eliminates the federal income tax on tips. And this is not a slogan. Didn't start with one person. That issue started with the workers.
That's right.
So don't come up in here and start talking about an issue that you don't know nothing about.
That's right.
Because these are the workers who have made this issue the centerpice. And it's One Fair Wage who've been working on this proposal for a very long time.
That's right.
So I'm pleased to join with all of you. Thank you to Delegate Boafo for your phenomenal leadership in Maryland and the work that you all are doing all across the country. Let's go past the TIPS Act and make workers receive the dignity and the respect that they deserve.
One fair wage.
Are there any questions?
One fair wage! One fair wage! One fair wage! One fair wage!
All right.
Congressman, you said earlier that we can pass the tip tax. Do you have any idea when would this be eligible for maybe the lame duck session or next year's tax talk or a Democratic reconciliation bill?
Well, as you know, I was recently reappointed to the Ways and Means Committee, which is the jurisdiction that oversees this issue, just last week, in fact. And so I will take up every opportunity to make sure that this issue is at the center. In fact, we are testifying this week in education and workforce. It should be education and labor because it's the people who actually. But I will be testifying this week to bring up our legislation and the voices of these workers. We'll take every opportunity between now and when we can get this bill acted upon.
If I can follow up, there are 4 other bills on this, but Republican bills and none from a tax rider. Does that give any significance if this is a tax rider doing this?
Well, I am aware of the other proposals. What those other bills don't do, they don't address the sub-minimum wage, which is, as you've heard from the workers, is the crux of the problem.
That's right.
Who is supposed to live off of $2.13 an hour? The other thing is they have no guardrails.
That's right.
They didn't write any legislation. They just took an idea from somebody else that told them to do it,
That's right.
They had no details or provisions, and that is why the TIPS Act is thoughtful, it's comprehensive, it has the guardrails that are necessary, it's endorsed by the workers and by businesses, small business restaurants, and I'm calling on my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to work with me to pass the legislation that will actually get across the finish line and can be signed by our next president of the United States, Kamala Harris.
That's why you're starting an ed and labor, because this is more of a minimum wage issue than a tax issue.
Well, to be clear, in the end, it's going to be about taxes, and I will ensure that our voices are heard. I'm with the help of One Fair Wage, we're enlisting members of Congress. The bill will be introduced today, and I'm asking every member, sign on as a co-sponsor. I don't care what committee of jurisdiction this is. It needs to be on the floor of the House so that we can protect these workers and move this issue forward. Gabby?
On the point about comparing it to other bills, a lot of the Republican proposals don't have a cap.
Yes.
How did you come to the cap of 112?
So it's based on other tax provisions, particularly those based on the earned income tax credit. And so we know that it's something that centers the worker. It's based on precedent in federal law. And it's something that definitely ensures that workers benefit, but protects us from people who shouldn't be getting a tax cut. I know that's all that the other side cares about, is giving tax cut to the very wealthy, but our proposals center the worker, which should be about tax fairness and equity. And so it is based on that provision in federal law.
Last question.
Sure.
So my question is more for Sari, but either of you.
Of course. Yep.
But since DC started phasing out the tipped wage in May 2023, the district has lost about 700 employees at full-service restaurants. About 80% of restaurants have raised prices. About 50% of restaurants have cut workers. I'm curious what your response is to that. Maybe other jurisdictions who might be concerned about, changing the rules.
So I don't know where you're getting your data, but if you look at government data that the DC Attorney General has approved, we have 10% more restaurants in the District of Columbia, 7% more restaurant jobs, and 6.8% higher wages. And that data was confirmed by the New York Times in April of this year. And so things are doing actually better in DC than they were before. If you look at even before DC, Flagstaff, Arizona, where we passed this 5 years ago, actually the industry's booming in Flagstaff. That's a town right outside of the Grand Canyon. More restaurants, more jobs, higher wages. Chicago just passed this. We already seen 60% of restaurants, even before full implementation, have already moved to one fair wage. I challenge anybody here to say Chicago is not a booming restaurant industry that continues to grow. And I mean, you just have to look at Las Vegas. I'm so sorry, but I mean, it seems like it's so easy to promote this fiction, but there are 7 states that have done this for decades: California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Minnesota, Montana, and Alaska. I challenge anybody to tell me Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Las Vegas are not destination restaurant cities in this country, some of the best and some of the fastest growing. Those 7 states have higher restaurant sales, job growth, small business growth rates, full service restaurant growth rates, and higher tipping averages. Why do they have higher tipping averages? Because who are the best tippers in the United States of America? Restaurant workers. When they get paid more, they tip better.
Last question.
Are you concerned about the revenue loss that would come from the no tax on tips?
You know, what's interesting is when Donald Trump proposed his Tax Cut and Jobs Act, there's no pay for, there were no hearings, 83% of the benefit went to the top 1%. We're talking about centering the workers who are the backbone of our economy, and the service sector is an important sector of our overall economy. It's one of the fastest growing parts of our economy.
That's right.
And so yes, making sure that workers have the benefit in our tax code, that it's equitable and just for workers and not for the wealthy and the big corporations, is something that this legislation does that other bills do not.
That's right.
So ask Donald Trump, does he have a pay for his tax cuts to the 1%? Once he gives you an answer, then I'll talk to you about your question.
That's right.
Thank you all very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
One fair wage.
One fair wage.